Good morning, everybody. My name is Will Strauss. I am one of the editors here at SVG Europe. Welcome to the Oval Cricket Ground. Welcome to FutureSPORT. Thank you to Rebecca for that incredibly impressive and in-depth presentation, which introduces some of the subjects we're going to cover throughout the day, including the one we're going to talk about next. In this session, we're going to take a look at some of the big challenges facing sports broadcasting, and I guess really some of the opportunities as well. Here to help me do that are, let's do it in the right order, Louise Lawler. She's DAZN's VP of Production and Editorial Operations. Cliona O'Leary from Sport Ireland. She's Director of Corporate Affairs, Communications and Marketing. Wendy Hendrickx, F1's Head of Live Production. Rachael Nightingale, Premier League Head of Media Operations and Innovation. And Victoria Cotton, BBC Sport Executive Producer, Live Streaming. Welcome to you all. Thank you for joining us today. And we're going to start with sort of a broad brushstroke, and then we're going to hone in a bit more. So following on from Rebecca's impressive presentation about the changes in sports video consumption, I'm going to talk about your thoughts, get some thoughts about the future challenges that the industry faces. So for me, it's sort of two big things. One, it's attracting and engaging and retaining new and younger sports viewers and fans. And then it's ensuring the industry has the right skills mix and knowledge to make that happen. Louise, to kick us off, am I right? Are these the big challenges?
I don't think we're at the point where we need to consider replacing traditional broadcasting. I think that people still want that big screen experience when they're watching sport. But I definitely think that engaging the next generation of fans is key, and it's on everyone's mind. How we do that, look, if we cracked it, we'd all be very, very wealthy people. And I think we've learned a lot over the last few years about how we use things like social media to engage that generation. I think we've made mistakes where we've used social media tools to broadcast, because that doesn't always work. I think adapting that and actually using them as engagement tools rather than broadcasting tools is pretty key. But I think it is about realising that the way that people consume sport now has changed dramatically. I think Rebecca's research pointed to that. Yes, the majority of people still sit down and watch it on a live screen, but actually two-screen watching now is critical, whether that's streaming social media comments, things like Twitter whilst you're watching, or looking at stats. I think people have become more sophisticated consumers of sport, and I think having that knowledge to drive some of the stuff Rebecca talked about, which is like stats analysis, having that knowledge at your fingertips whilst you're watching a live event. I think they're all key things that we've adapted and embraced to try and bridge that gap. I think there's a lot more that we can do. But I think they're pretty critical problems, and they do tie in. It's, this is the problem, how do we engage the next set of fans? And what technology do we actually engage with? Because we don't all have endless budgets on what we use to do that. So we try and test certain things, but I think engaging with the right technology at the right time is pretty critical.
Thank you. And we're going to touch on some of those ideas in a minute. Before we do, though, Vix, I'd like to get your take on this, if we don't mind. I think do you think it's fair to say we need to first have a better understanding of who that audience is? And if that is the case, how do we do that?
I think, audiences are key. You don't want to be producing something that nobody watches and no one's interested in. So I think the first thing is you look at your data, and I think you be clever enough to bring in data experts. I think you have to be clever enough to set the right questions. So you're not just looking at numbers, you're actually looking at how those numbers really fit in with what the aim of your broadcast is. So are you broadcasting to an audience that you know that you already have? Are you trying to increase engagement? Are you trying to bring in a new audience? If you're bringing in a new audience, it might be less about numbers, but it might be more about engagement, and it might be more about value. So I think it's just been really, really smart. I think listening to the audience is really key. I think sometimes we can get quite remote from what we're trying to achieve here. And I think as well, there is something around being a new kind of leadership. When I first started 20 odd years ago, we were running in replays off tape still. Now, anybody sitting in this room could do an edit of this and broadcast it. So I think there's something there about when you're working with your teams and you're working with younger people coming through, is actually sitting back and saying, right, okay, I don't perhaps understand this, you understand this, and giving them support, giving them the opportunity to actually do what works for the generation. So it's really actually believing in the people that you're bringing through. But what you want to do there as well is you're almost like you're the brand protector. So you might not be the protector of cool, you might not be able to bring cool anymore, but what you can bring is support. What you can bring is making sure they don't break the rules. And what you can bring is making sure that your staff have a really great voice in the creation of that content. But I think that is really crucial. It is understand your data, be data supported, not data led. Otherwise you could be running down a rabbit hole, and listen to your audience, spot the trends, spot when it's a lasting trend, spot when it's a peak, and then you know that you're investing for the long term, because budgets are tight. You don't want to be investing in something that might be amazing today, but actually next summer there might be another platform, and then you have to invest in a whole new set of tools. So flexibility, data knowledge, and let the young ones run free a little bit.
I'm slightly distraught that you said we weren't cool there, but
Well, obviously we are very cool, but you know what I mean? I'm generalising slightly.
All right, okay. Just before we move on quickly, Vix, do we also need to change the way we measure success?
Yes, absolutely, because that does go down to the audience you're trying to reach. We're not looking at homogenous. Everybody in this room is something different. You're a husband, you're a wife, you're a mother, you might be in a different mood state. So it goes down to really, really making it clear what you're actually trying to get from those stats, what you were trying to achieve in your innovations. So are you trying to give something to increase relaxation? Are you trying to be the ultimate data supplier to bring in those really, really kind of core fans that might be with you every day of the week? Or are you actually looking at an opportunity audience which currently don't come to your product? So you have to just be really clear and just be clear with the questions that you're asking and how those metrics work. So one day it might be engagement, another it might be appreciation, another time it might be brand awareness. So just be really clear with what you're trying to get out of your data and what you're trying to get from your metrics.
Thank you very much. So let's have a look at maybe a few things and a few ways that sports content might look in the future. Because just because we've always done something one way doesn't mean we can't do it differently. So do we need to change the way we cover sport and or present sports content? That's the big question. So Rachael, at the Premier League, you've started looking at the gamification of your broadcast output. Tell us what you've done and why.
So yes, we have started looking at that, and we're on a journey with gamification. It's probably important to say what I do for the league and sort of make you all understand where my role is. So a lot of what I do at the league is actually about activation of ideas. So when one of our rights holders comes to us and says, we want to do this, it's kind of my job to make sure it actually ends up happening if it's possible. So we've been working with Sky Sports in the UK for quite a long time now, I'd say probably over 3 years, on how we can look to provide a gamified view of the Premier League game. So really, really exciting stuff. I would probably say we're on about phase 3 at the moment, and actually we've got a video if you want to just roll that behind me. It's got no audio, so you guys can just breathe it in while I'm chattering away here. So this is what you're seeing on the screen here is, as I say, phase 3 of our game mode project with Sky Sports. And huge credit to Arsenal, who have allowed us to put in a full-length track at the Emirates, up at gantry level. I think we're the first to do it in this way, and we're really, really excited about it. The idea is to try and get the EAFC style coverage, and I think for you on the left-hand side, you've got traditional camera 1. On the right-hand side, you've got one of our latest versions of the game mode feed. Quite different. Some people love it, some people hate it. Sometimes I do a vote in the room, but I don't think we will today. We're really, really excited about this. This is very much R&D. It's a massive trial for us. This is available internationally every single Arsenal game at the moment, so our partners around the world are given the option to put this out as a second feed, and we're getting some really interesting feedback from those feeds. I guess, this really lives into how can we challenge ourselves to do something different and not be too scared to go for it. And I think we've been really bold in just getting this in and putting it out there. And Sky Sports themselves have put this out in the UK, and it had very, very interesting feedback. Not my numbers to share, but enough for us to want to continue working on it. It's really, really exciting. What I love about this, if you're a football fan, is you really get a better understanding of tactical positioning on the field. Now, one of the things we're doing at the moment is we're hoping to have the full length of the track operational for the next match. And what we really want to do is try and test the speed. So how fast can we go before we really make you feel sick? So that's game mode, which I hope you'll be excited about, as we are.
Just one quick thing before we move on from that. You can't share the numbers, I get that, but what's the general emotional reaction been, either from a production point of view or from a viewer point of view?
Well, both. Production point of view, I mean, we work with all of our partners whenever we do something like this. So the reason we pushed so hard for this is all of our broadcast partners together in a room put their hand up and said they wanted to see it developed, as well as Sky Sports being so keen to push this project forward, so credit to them. They were also very bold in putting it on a linear channel. And so, production expertise is saying, let's go for it. In terms of the information we're getting back in, I think we could probably just say that it's got a remarkably younger audience. And I hope that no one will be upset with me saying that. So this is a project, we're rolling with it, and we will keep developing this. And what's wonderful about this project is each time there's a match, we slightly tweak what we do, and we hope eventually we will find the magic mix of, perfect. And then who knows what this might become in the future. This might well lead into the other thing that we're working on. So I'll ask the team at MRMC to roll the next video for me. So our wonderful team over at Premier League Productions have worked incredibly hard to provide the DAZN, which is now what you're seeing behind me. And actually, if anyone wants a deep dive on this, James Robinson is in the room, and he's done a huge amount of the legwork on this. So well done to him. So this is pretty obvious what this is. This is a data-driven feed. What this uses is the second spectrum data available in our stadiums to provide a live augmented graphic feed. And what's really interesting about this is we also have our own commentators specifically for this feed so that they really talk to the graphics that you're seeing. So obviously, this is going to attract a certain viewer. It's not the traditionalist view, but it's definitely very interesting. And this is also available 1 match per round at the moment for any of our broadcast partners to take and can put out into their markets as an alternate feed if they wish. Again, it's something that's in development, so it's very much a product we're making available, but it is, something that we continue to develop, and we might do more within the future in terms of fantasy integration, but also for me, I would love to see in the future that we put, the rail cam, the game mode cam as the main feed here. And that isn't possible right now, but it might be possible in the future. So all of these little ways that we can try and improve the use of data in the feed and also be bold to try something new. And I think that's sort of where we're at the moment.
Thank you. Just again briefly, what's the reaction to that been?
It's like most things that are new. Some people love it and some people hate it. But I think there's enough people that love it for us to be encouraged to keep providing it. And again, we will keep tweaking it. And I think the more engagement we can get with that feed, the more success. So I think, future integration with some fantasy data would be really, really important to develop this.
Brilliant, thank you. Wendy, Formula One, a very different type of sport, but you're also trying some similar things. So I know that data and graphics is very important to the way that F1's now being produced, but also you've been looking at content specifically for children. So if we just quickly see the F1 Kids video, please, if that's all right.
Formula One introduced a dedicated broadcast for children during the 2023 Hungarian Grand Prix. With a colourful and fun international feed featuring bespoke graphics, F1 makes data accessible to kids, ensuring everyone in the family can enjoy the excitement of the sport.
I had to wait for the zoom, otherwise it would have crashed my audio. Wendy, what have you done there and why have you done it?
Yeah, well, we have produced our F1 Kids feed. We've done that for Hungary, as you have seen. I think this is a great example of how Formula One is pushing the boundaries and finding a new way to reach out to our fans. I think this has shown that it's important to reach out to young audiences in general because it's easy accessible, it's easy to digest. We have simplified the graphics package, for example, and we have added some fun things to the feed as well. So this is a way for us to make a difficult sport, which is Formula One is a technically very difficult sport, accessible for a wider generation.
Is it the same people who've made that? Is it your same team, the same production team, or you have to bring in different people in order to create that?
We bring in a few different people, but on average it is the same team. And from I was very, very close to the production of the first one, and it's the most fun production we've ever did, basically. Everything is very serious in Formula One normally. But this one was great fun to work on, and up to the highest levels in the company, everybody embraced it as well, and was very enthusiastic about it. So,
as somebody who doesn't understand the Formula One, I could watch that and probably get more out of it than I would do from the standard broadcast. But what are you not dumbing down? You're not dumbing down for the kids, are you? Because I don't think that presumably would be a mistake. So, what are you giving them in terms of data that's different to what you might give me normally on a Sunday afternoon?
Yeah, no, we're certainly not dumbing down. We're just simplifying it a little bit. Basically, a lot of our graphics package is quite complicated and needs very high-skilled commentators as well to explain what's going on the screen, what's going on strategically, what's happening with the cars, etc. Now, this set of graphics is, first of all, it's colorful, so it's very easy. People and children, you know, it's about grown-ups, big brothers, uncles, fathers, mums, watching it with their children and getting them enthusiastic about the sports and giving them a path into the sports, because these children will become our next generation of avid Formula One fans. So it's not about making it like for dummies. We don't call it for dummies. It's really not. But we make it a little bit more comprehensible for them. I don't know if that's the right word.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah. So, for example, we compare the weight of a car to an elephant, an African elephant, for example. Kids can use their imagination about that, and they have a better understanding of what's going on. So it's all these little things, and also a little bit about education as well. We use a lot of terminology in Formula One that is typically the avid fan knows everything about it, but it's about explaining what is a formation lap, or why do we do that? What is a yellow tire? What does it do? What is the effect of that? And it's kind of bringing those young kids, because we're aiming like in between 8 to 12-year-olds with this feed, but it's bringing them into the sport. And also we provide our own kids commentary as well on it. So that also gives the children this imagination of it's not just something that is out there in the world and it's not accessible for children. Now we started this with 2 broadcast partners for Hungary. We are doing an F1 kids feed now this weekend for Abu Dhabi, and we have 12 broadcast partners now. It's a worldwide distribution at this stage, and we also allow our broadcast partners to add their own commentary, so their own local commentary, to even make it more tailored to the local children, wherever in the world they are.
I have to say, comparing a car to an elephant is in my sweet spot as well, so let's not talk too down about that. Let's bring in Cliona. Cliona, this is all very well. F1, without being rude to Rachael or to Wendy, F1 and Premier League have a lot of money, whether we like to describe it that way or not. There are sports out there, tier 2 sports, shall we say, of which Sport Ireland is representing and has within your sort of umbrella, who can't dream of doing some of these things. However, is this still a potential opportunity for those tier 2 sports to look at a different way of covering things, of sports that maybe aren't mainstream?
Yeah, and absolutely it is. And a lot of smaller sports are seeing the ability now to be able to broadcast themselves, because you know, the technology is much cheaper, and in Ireland where we're based, there is more like single cam AI cameras where you can stream content, and it's given you the capability of being able to get more visibility on your production. And then also, like a lot of media companies are struggling with resources, and you can supply, the content for them to be able to put out in the news, and it gets far more visibility. Also, what we saw with the European Games as well, for us in Ireland, was the EBU created content from that, and within 12 hours we got customizable clips that could be shared with the sports and also with the athletes, and the athletes could share it themselves, and so that was a way of reaching new audiences as well. So that is really positive. I suppose the challenge is that, it is, it can be, now you've got your ability to stream yourselves, and, we still need more visibility on linear channels. I mean, so if you're broadcasting on smaller, on social media or streaming your content, your audience to start with is very, very small, and then it is, the audience is very fragmented, and content is very fragmented on the internet, and so you can actually end up getting smaller again. So that is the big challenge with it. I think, promotion and curation are really, really key to those second-tier sports. And the EBU and I was part of an OTT working group with the EBU around the design of a channel whereby we could put all the European, the World Championships on the one channel, which is coming soon. But it's also, there's a huge amount of collaboration being done with national sports bodies as well, so that if you have content, you can share it. And so it's working with public service media in order to be able to have that platform there for the sports that maybe aren't getting that kind of visibility. So really, promotion and curation, I think for the smaller sports, is critical, aligned with the new technology.
Thanks very much. Louise, DAZN, you've got some personalised and interactive experiences, either in the pipeline or in fact already out there. What are you doing, and also why are you doing it?
Just very quickly, just on what the ladies just said, I think the interesting theme that comes across from all of these examples is that people can consume sport the way they want to. So whether it's streaming your daughter racing in a swimming competition, or you're watching Formula One with your grandkids, you're watching it, you're choosing how you consume that sport. And I think that's one of the key things that the market is driving towards. From a DAZN perspective, I think we're privileged in a way because of being an OTT platform. So we're not, let's say, at the behest of a linear schedule. So we can offer alternative viewing. And one of the things we've done is a watch party experience, which allows consumers to watch along either with family and friends, or also to watch a show, let's say, with an influencer involved or a former player, and they're offering analysis and insight as you watch, providing kind of some of the stat stuff you said in the data center. That's really interesting because that does work. It allows people to feedback on a player's performance because they've got live stats available to them. They might agree or disagree with the influencer, but it gives them that additional enhanced experience. And bringing in things like we discussed, like polls and competitions and that kind of thing, makes them feel more part of the live event. And I think that's the ultimate goal, to really engaging the customer and getting them, on board with what you're trying to do.
Thank you. You're also tailoring your output depending on region. Can we just see a quick MotoGP video, which sort of, I think, will illustrate the point?
Descubre las nuevas funciones de DAZN que te permitirán vivir MotoGP de otra manera. Con la grada puedes chatear con otros aficionados y rivales mientras ves las carreras en directo. Es muy fácil participar. Mientras lo ves en tu televisor, ve al evento con tu móvil y abre el chat. Haz tus predicciones sobre lo que ocurre en carrera o quién ganará con las encuestas en directo y comparte tus reacciones en tiempo real. Únete a la conversación con la grada DAZN.
Now, my Spanish isn't great, so what was all that about?
So basically, La Grada is the stand, which is, the fan. basically watching the sport. And what it allows you to do is to have that dual screen experience where you can log on to the watch party or the La Grada on your mobile. You can feed back to what the commentators are saying, what the influencers are discussing. You can express your opinion. So ultimately that increases that level of engagement, and that's what we're talking about. Obviously motorsport fans, as Wendy know, are very vocal about what they think and want to express that, and it really increases that engagement level. So it's working really well for us. We do it across quite a few sports at DAZN.
Excellent, thank you. Fix, what do you think about all this? From your point of view, not the BBC's point of view, but you work for the BBC. What do you think about these changes in the way we view, or the way we provide viewing experiences? Just because we have done something one way doesn't mean to say we have to do it the same way again, does it?
Yeah, I think that's the key thing, really, isn't it? And the way that I'm kind of looking at all this, and I'm seeing what's happening with the Premier League and the Premier League stats, you know, you look at that and you think that is amazing for a sport that has an incredible fan base, and where you're really trying to drive that conversation on a Monday when people are making a cup of tea. It gives you, you know, everybody wants to have just that one-upmanship on their friends. And then you kind of look at tier 2 and what could be done in a tier 2 sport in the same way. You're probably not going to want to know about progressive passes, but in badminton, if you can put little bits on there which open a sport up, where perhaps there isn't that knowledge in the community, you know, how fast is the shuttlecock going? And then looking at Wendy, right, adapt on from that. Actually, that is as fast, you know, this is the fastest motorsport, racket sport in the world. How quick is that against a car going down the straight? So just starting to kind of piece together all of these different things that are happening at the moment, and you can see there is just this massive, massive opportunity for every sport going, but you have to kind of be really bold with thinking and adapting and making it precise. Again, it goes back to the audiences. Are we doing this for the audience, or are we doing this because we can? Are we doing this for our audience, or are we doing it because we're trying to bring in a different audience? And it still goes, you know, it's brilliant to put all this tech in, and it's great when we have, you know, you think about automatic clipping, automatic packages. Well, that's brilliant, but also it can free up your people because, you know, people, until AI gets a sense of humour, actually you still need that, because that is what drives those really big social media clips. If you take an example from the summer, one of our best performing clips from the World Athletics was the shot putter doing the 100-metre hurdles. Now, that wouldn't have been picked up by AI. But that did so well, and that brought such a big awareness to that event in there. And also as well, you know, it's brilliant that everybody can stream and you get the opportunity, but it's thinking again about the audience experience. So we don't do things the way we do in the past. If you think about, you know, the EBU, you think about world feeds, actually think about what is the audience experience if you are just putting a world feed to line. Because quite often, those pauses that have been built in over the years are for a studio to come in, or they're for packaging. You've really got to think about, is this worth the audience spending their time? Time, effort, connection is really, really precious. So you have to squeeze as much as you can into that to make it a really worthwhile package, I think, for your audience to consume.
Really interesting, thank you. Let's quickly go through some buzz topics which Rebecca introduced as well. Mobile and short form content. Now, those can be two things that are very different, or they can be two things which are the same, depending on how you want to address it. Cliona, perhaps you've already touched on this yourself from a tier 2 perspective. Should we be embracing short form content for mobile? And if so, in what ways are we supposed to be doing it? And guys, chip in if you've got your own take on it as well.
Yeah, and I suppose like the way that, you know, smaller sports are looking at it is by using influencers, and, you know, the athletes have a great connection and a ready-made audience for short-form content. And also for tier 2 versus, you know, Premier League and other sports like that, there is that accessibility, availability of rights to be able to manipulate and share content like that. So absolutely, you know, access to that and an ability to be able to share it is really important, and that access to younger audiences as well. You know, like we were talking, and you mentioned earlier, just around experienced and staffing and finding the right people, you know, to be able to do this. And I suppose that is one of the struggles, you know, from a sports perspective. In smaller sports, you know, there isn't a huge amount of resources within them, and to be able to have that kind of ability to be able to turn around and cover and share like that is difficult. And so like really partnerships and collaborative efforts as well are really important with, you know, likes of public service broadcasters, but also other media as well, in order to be able to have that reach and be able to have that kind of capability as well to be able to do it.
The BBC does that, doesn't it, Vic? The BBC collaborates with federations to make it easier for them to stream, both for mobile and online.
Yes.
Yes, so it does that. That's the way to do it.
We're a good platform, and we're a strong platform, and I think it's the fragmentation and the discoverability, I think, is a really big thing that we need to crack about all sports. It's where do you watch things, when do you watch things, when you're looking at new sports coming through or there's different events, how important is this event, what does it mean for the audience? I think, you know, keep a media diary, just for a day, everybody, keep a media diary about from the moment that you wake up to the moment you go to bed, how do you consume sports content in 24 hours? And just look at it, you know, it'll be short form in the morning, then you might grab some clips in the afternoon, then it might be you want something a little bit longer and a little bit funnier when you're on the train going home, and then you might want to spend your Monday night watching the Premier League, you know. So just think yourselves about that whole suite of content that you really get into during the day. It's everywhere now, and each different thing has a different purpose to drive you, but we keep wanting to drive back to that live moment because that is what sport is all about. That's why we all kind of got into it, isn't it? It's the emotion and it is the connection that live sport can give you.
So here's a good one. Here's one that really baffles me. Influencer content. We've seen some very interesting boxing fights over the last few months between some people that aren't boxers and boxers. I'll come to Louise because DAZN has some pretty significant boxing rights, so you seem the obvious person to ask this question to. What the hell is all that about, and do we embrace it or do we fight it? No pun intended.
It's about 8 billion people watching their channels, basically. The reach of social media influencers now is insane. I don't think there's a sport in the world that wouldn't want to tap into that. And I think what we've always done crossover. Vicky and I did many pieces when we worked at BBC together around bringing celebrities and other sports stars into different sports, and it does actually strike a chord because you bring in a new audience and people see people in a different light. So the crossover thing I think has always existed, but the reach of these young influencers now is insane. They are dedicated about their training as well. So I remember the first couple of times I watched it, I was like, is this really going to be a proper fight? But it is. And now they're starting to take on MMA athletes and boxers themselves. And from a commercial perspective, I can't stress how successful this has been for our company. It's such a positive move to embrace that audience that may not be a mainstream sports fan, but they're coming in on the coattails of somebody who has a massive reach. They're seeing it in a different light, and they're engaging with that. And from our perspective, it's been a huge success.
Are we going to see KSI doing F1 or playing for Everton?
I think he'd probably do anything if you asked him. He seems to be open to most things. But yeah, they have an extraordinary. In fairness to the guys, I don't know them personally, I can assure you. But I do think that they are dedicated in how they take these challenges on. Their training regimes are pretty intense. I'm not going to say they're at the level of a boxer. But it's still entertaining, and I think it's bringing entertainment into the sporting ring, and I think that's something as well that widens the reach of what we're trying to do.
No, sorry, go. So polite. I was just going to say, cross-sport promotion has always been a tool that's been successful, but actually when you're looking at short-form content, the data available and how you best maximise that for looking at new audiences, there is a little sweet spot there. So that kind of influencer or celebrity piece where you can get someone from one sport and to another sport, bite-sized content on social or other ways to entice a new audience. Once you entice them, how do you then get them to stay with you? So, I don't have all the answers there, but there's a really interesting piece there about how you can cross-promote and use that short-form content.
And working for the BBC, there's always little things that set off red lights and flashing lights in my mind. And one is around reputation, and they might be brilliant for the sport, but if they're an influencer, they're also working in lots of different areas as well. So not just looking about how they bring in a sporting audience, I think you really need to be aware of the whole of their influence and what they say in other areas as well, to decide whether or not you want to put your sport and your reputation and your brand 100% in what they bring, just from a purely numbers point of view.
Yeah, I think there is always a concern around how much is for sale with these people, because everything they do is promoted and is sponsored by various companies, probably their own companies, so they maximize the money they make. And I get the point completely. I think you do have to realize there is a price to what they're selling. But I still think from an entertainment perspective and from an engagement perspective, it brings an entire new audience to fight sports that we would really struggle to reach, even with the biggest budgets in the world.
Just to mention, like reputation, Vicky mentioned there, I think also, when we're talking about the future of sports broadcasting, we do have to look at, there's massive inequalities in sport as well. And it's women's sport, which UNESCO had it in 2018 as 4%. When we do measurements in Ireland, it's in around 10%. We have to look at, we need to attract a wider audience. We need to speak to more people. We need to look at diversity and who we've got on screen and what kind of sports and a mix of sports, and not keep focusing. And that's where new technology and brands and financial inputs into sports, big sports, is a real challenge. We want, ultimately, I suppose I'm coming from Sport Ireland in terms of the health of sport and the ecosystem. We want more people active, and people don't all play soccer, rugby or GA, the three big sports in Ireland. There's a lot of other sports, and you used to trip over those sports a lot in public service media, but now, with less people watching public service, and you're not getting to see as many, a wide option of sports for people as well. So do you think that there is that collective responsibility for everybody in the sports ecosystem to work more collaboratively and to try and ensure that there is more equality built into the system?
Really interesting, thank you. Here's a really crucial question. So we're talking about new ways of doing things, or new content, or new technology. But how do we blend tradition with these new approaches? How can we drive change while respecting the legacy of a sport that's been around for 150 years? Rachael, you smiled at me, so unfortunately you get stuck with this question. How on earth do we do that within the parameters of what's actually allowed as well?
So I think it's really important that you don't alienate the traditional viewer, your hardcore fans who are going to watch what we're doing. And actually, our game mode is a great example of that. We're not putting that out as the main feed because we know it will alienate some of our traditional viewers at the current stage. So I think we have to tread very carefully, and actually, I'm probably not going to say what you would like me to say here, which is that I actually think we do need to be very, very careful about how we change our products. But I also think at the same time that as leagues and rights holders and broadcasters and tech companies, we need to be bold and we need to push the boundaries. Otherwise, we will never engage that younger audience, or we will never keep them once they're engaged. So again, it's a philosophical answer, but hopefully that's a good start. Maybe Wendy can pick up.
Yeah, I think we must not be afraid to leave the older demographic. For example, race fans, avid fans are mainly, and sorry, I don't want to offend anyone here, but 40, 50-year-old males. And I think we must try to broaden our horizon there. I also think, and the word has been said by Louise earlier, entertainment. I think entertainment combined with sports in general is a very important next step. It's not all about that one person influencer that is in the ring of boxing, but it's all about all the other influencers that are in the venue and are enjoying that entertainment spectacle. Same for Formula One, I think. What we've seen last weekend, actually, in Las Vegas was a perfect combination of a great race. We will always make a feed that feeds into the needs of the avid racing fan. It will always be there, but we've also embraced the spectacle that was hanging around that venue of Las Vegas. And I think this has shown that we were able to embrace new things, embrace the entertainment value of a specific event, and also looking at a little bit more the background stories, the lifestyle stories about our heroes in sports. I think it's really important as well.
I was just going to say, Wendy, I think Drive to Survive is one of the best examples of that, where you've taken a sport that had, you know, I'm not going to say it's, you know, but it's a very specific, as you said, demographic that really follows it closely. And you've just opened up the sport to a whole new generation.
Yeah.
And by bringing that entertainment piece. And I think the bit that I really love about it is you haven't gone for the big stars. You've gone for the up-and-coming people. And what you're doing is you're humanizing them as people, so that engagement level between the sports fan, they buy into them. They're on the journey with them. They want to see them succeed.
Yeah.
And I think that part of sport entertainment is phenomenal. I think Formula One have done an amazing job on that.
I think the most important thing in Drive to Survive and why it's been so successful, because we ask us this question all the time, why is it so successful? It's about lifting that helmet. Now, a tennis player or a football player on the pitch, you can see their emotions, right? The driver has the helmet on, he's in a carbon fiber monocoque, and there's no emotion whatsoever. The best emotion you can get is from a team radio, is usually frustration. But what Drive to Survive did to Formula One is lifting off that helmet of that driver, and then all of a sudden that became a human being, that became a hero. And not only the drivers, but I also think team principals, for example, and a good example is Günther Steiner. I think maybe without Drive to Survive, there would only be a small percentage in this room who would have ever heard of Günther Steiner, and now he's a cult. And young people embrace him as part of our sports.
Thank you. Vic, you had something to say?
Yeah, just, you know, we've been talking about not alienating audiences, but I think just remember how we've all changed. You know, audiences do adapt and do change and do want things differently. So as long as you stay true to your sport, I think people will really go for it. You just want to see things modernised and changed. Yeah, give us all a bit of credit. I know I said we weren't cool earlier, but actually, you know, we do like things a little bit different as well.
I'm definitely not cool. We've run out of time, so I'm going to apologise to Veronica, who's in charge of this event, because I'm going to ask another question, but as I've got the mic, I promised at the beginning of this we would talk about whether we had the skills to make all these things happen. So I want to very, very briefly just ask one last question. All these lovely new things, whether we are keeping the traditional audience or we're trying to embrace a new audience, does our industry, and I include everybody in this room, have the right skills to make that happen? And if not, what do we need to do? Who'd like to answer that ridiculously difficult question?
Make it cheaper. I think ultimately it comes down to spending your money in the right way, because it's like Vicky said, it's about really honing in on what you're targeting to get the growth and the reach that we're all trying to get to get that engagement level. And the trials sometimes can be, you know, where we're trying to embrace new technology. It's about working as partners. Because ultimately, if any one of us can make it successful, then that enables tech companies to take it elsewhere, to scale it and grow it. And I think it's being on that journey together, because ultimately we're all trying to move in the same direction. But it's about working closely with people with the knowledge of the sports consumer, and the people with the knowledge with the technology, and how do you bring those two things together?
Sorry.
Yeah.
I was going to say culture change. So seeing that multitasking, you know, that you can do lots of different jobs, doesn't mean that you're not brilliant at one thing. Mm-hmm. Seeing a multi-skilled person as being the absolute pinnacle would change everything, I think, you know, and that is what we all need to embrace in the future.
Brilliant. Thank you.
I also think it's that the industry is going to change a lot over the next 10 years. AI is going to change things massively, and it's just going to be interesting to see when AI is doing perhaps more of the mundane and more of the kind of the clipping and all the rest of it, which we're already on that journey. Do we then have the right people working with us to then use the free time they have to develop, you know, more exciting content, more digestible content that is, bringing in new viewers and all the other things we're talking about today.
Thank you. Last word, Wendy. Last one.
Yeah, I think
Sorry.
also be open to change and be open to change the way we think and the way we broadcast is already half the path, I think, to get there. And I think we have the right people in the industry, but we just need to be open to it, open to change, and not stick or not be stubborn, basically.
Be stubborn. I won't be stubborn either, Cliona. Go on.
Just to
Go
add
on.
that reverse mentorship is really important, and just that culture change. That we've an older generation in a lot of media organisations, and it is about creating an open environment to say we want to learn from you to young people as well, because they've consumed media very differently to us over the last 10 years.
Amazing. Thank you, Louise, Cliona, Wendy, Rachael, Vix. Thank you for your time. Please join me in thanking the panel for this panel session.